Greetings, brothers, and welcome to another video. So, this is going to be a very specific, unique video, you could say, or a collab. You couldn't even mention that as well. But little error on my end, which I probably refer that around 27 minutes in the video, where I had everything recorded except for my side of the audio. So most of the time, you're just going to be hearing technically my dub of the voice in the first 27 minutes, and then afterwards it's actually the voice that I actually recorded during the scene. So it's just me and Gamza talking about the elements about Space Marines and all that, and I'll try to almost replicate similar, but what's going to happen in the first 27 minutes is I'll probably have to either cut and make very specific points that Gamza is addressing it, but after 27 minutes it's going to be most likely just a little bit more casual talk, what it actually how it should have been. But my dumbass didn't even fucking take the audio recording on my end at the first 27 minutes. So if it sounds a bit iffy at the start, there's your answer right there. So I'll try to dub it a little bit, and then he will just answer the question and all that. Or then again, I could just bullshit and be like, do you like female Space Marines? And he's like, yeah, I like these. No, anyways, I'm joking. So anyways, I hope you're enjoying the video. There isn't going to be super edited or anything. You could call it almost a podcast. So it's almost going to take an hour long, more or less. But I hope you really enjoy it. That's going to be for the video for today. And then there'll be more videos coming in the next coming days. So hope you enjoyed and enjoy the rest of it. So for the witness for this quarter of today, we have Mr. Gamza right here for this interview. And today, I want to ask you a question, Mr. Gumaz. And what is the Space Marines and what they are talking about? And it's specifically about how people think about other variety of things, it's a marine power armor, which is a knight and all that. But I want to clarify specifically, at least what is a Space Marine in the base foundation of things.
Well, a Space Marine is a walking demigod that cannot be destroyed by any other sci-fi faction. Space Marines are the pinnacle of humanity, and they basically just win no matter what, because 40k is the top of the top. But to give you a serious answer, it's basically, I think, I would say, who doesn't know what a Space Marine is at this point? Give me 1 second. My dog's going crazy. My apologies. Unprofessional. All right. I would say if you just want a very basic rundown of the Space Marine, this is what I've talked about numerous times, and then that would just basically be Space Marines are the pinnacle of what humanity has right now. They were supposed to be humanity's protectors. And so this is why I tend to spurg out whenever I see writing from Space Marine 2 and shit, and it's they just don't get it right. Because it's these guys have a long history. You should know that they're psycho-conditioned. They're trained to become what their chapter is. It's not like a basic military recruitment where it's hey, do you want to join in? All right, let's run you through some discipline exercises, train you how to use a bolter. And okay, congratulations, you're now a Space Marine. It's no, these dudes are recruited from whichever planet it may be, or wherever they want to grab their Space Marines from. But basically, once they grab them as a youngling, a child, they are then essentially indoctrinated into becoming whatever it is. Let's say if it's an Ultramarine, you are indoctrinated to becoming an Ultramarine. You're no longer a basic human. You didn't just join the military. You are an Ultramarine. So this idea that now you have a bunch of individuality, all this personality to kind of go along with it. It's not to say that they can't have no personality at all, but I'd say a lot of it is repressed, if you will. It's pushed down a bit because it's your training comes first. You're not going to be walking around, slinging all these stupid jokes. And now I know people like to bring that up a lot. Oh, I read this one book and this one Space Marine said a joke. And it's And so you're just going to blanket this across the board. What are they here to do? They're here to protect humanity. They realize that their numbers are thin and the threats are everywhere. So it's they should take their job seriously.
I can't remember this section specifically. This is me breaking the fourth wall. So if I recall specifically, I think I was asking Gamza about how people would look into these books, talking about the salamanders and the space wolves that have this certain comedic relief. And I don't remember exactly what I was asking him, but I think it was more of that, is it even possible, even with these little comedic reliefs that make them a little bit more human, is it possible to have a Space Marine like that? And I think I asked him around this one.
I haven't read any Space Wolf books. I've just read their codex a while back. But I would say that they do tend to have more personality overall. They're just kind of that rough and tumble kind of group. And I do think that it does fit them a little bit more because they don't follow the Codex Astartes the way that a lot of other chapters do. And they just don't give a shit about it. They're pretty much doing their own thing. And so it's I can kind of understand to a degree. but it's like they still take their job seriously. It's not like let's say Space Marine 2 where they're just sitting here bitching and moaning and talking shit to each other and shit talking their own commander and stuff. It just gets ridiculous at that point. So that's why I'd say that people tend to kind of lose that flavor a bit where you give them a little and then they take it and they run off with it and it's like whoa whoa whoa. It's almost like how people say that Warhammer 40K is satire and it's just like no, it has elements of satire in it, but it doesn't mean the whole thing is that. So yes, you can have a couple of elements in, let's say, Space Wolves, where maybe they're being a little rowdy or something, but then they act like the whole damn chapter is a joke. Everybody's just, like I seen some guy that left a comment. He was like, oh yeah, he's like, well, I read this one book where they were farting and making jokes or something, and I'm like, look, I've never read that book before, but that already sounds pretty stupid already. But even then, let's say it did happen. Cool. So so now we're just gonna say that like across the board, like all Space Marines are like these goofy dudes. It just doesn't make sense. And now you're just kind of like pulling yourself out of that element. And I think a good book that has good writing in it is going to pull you into the story and into the environment. A lot of this like Marvel superhero, stop the music, hey, it's time to laugh. I think that's the opposite of what 40K is. I think it should be serious. It should be grim dark. And I know a lot of people go, oh, well, it can't be too serious. And I'm like, well, then maybe 40K is not for you. Maybe you should go read like some Marvel comics or something else like that, because it's just silly to me that the setting is called grim dark and everyone's like, oh, but that's too grim dark. Huh? A serious setting? That doesn't even make sense.
So I had to like cut a little bit on the audio and the video a bit because I can't remember every specific word that I did, but I do remember them mostly, at least the main parts. And then this one, I think, because I've already mentioned like in my videos, like I told him like, oh, in my videos, I've already talked about like Primaris and all that in 8th edition, but I was like curious of his input of about any Primaris stuff, or is there anything extra that he wants to put in while we're having this discussion. And yeah, that's pretty much it, I think, from what I can recall on this one.
I think you've covered it all pretty well. I mean, just to run it down, it was just more of a matter of, hey, we've got a new model line that we'd like to release and just resell you a bunch of new Space Marines. And so we're just going to kind of put in some bullshit lore just to justify the fact that we want to sell you more models. And I didn't mind the overall look for the most part for the Primaris Marines. Although the artwork that they were releasing for it was quite clean and safe, I would say. But you could have still made it grim dark. It still could have worked. But I think it would have been far better if it was, hey, this is some new armor that we're releasing and we're going to be giving it out to the chapters, rather than, hey, here's some new spacier Space Marines that have been, locked down in a dungeon for the last thousands and thousands of years. And so here they are now.
Now, roughly about 12 minutes, when I was doing the recording at least, there was I think I mentioned in this one was talking about the armor. How it would have been better developed. It would have been better as armor instead of just being this new genetically built, Space Marine. How they shoehorned it in 8th edition. I think that's more roughly what I asked him. It was more of, oh, you already cut. We're already seems like we already jumped into a little bit of jumped ahead a little bit, but I'll always bring it back. And I think I just asked him what do you think about the armor? Is the Primaris armor would have been better as developed armor, or would have been better if it was genetically super soldiers and all that? That's roughly what I asked. I can't remember specifically what he said, what I was asking him, because too bad I don't have the fucking audio, do I?
I think the armor actually would have been a lot better. I think it would make sense, like if they had like more defensive things, or let's say that it would, kind of like Halo, how it would like inject foam into you or whatever to save you from certain wounds or whatever. I just think you could just use anything else like that would make sense to say, hey, they got an additional wound. It's like, I don't know what this whole new lore thing was. It was just weird to me. That's why I was like, this idea that you're just going to have all these new dudes getting injected into the chapters and stuff. And they're like, yeah, come on in. Just give them new armor. That's way better.
In this one, I kind of remember, because I was talking about that, how in my videos I mentioned and talked about that, the lore and the art and all that, was talking about that, there's not meant to be technological advancement, meanwhile in 8th edition and afterwards, they just contradict themselves over and over again, which to the point that, is this really what they're really stating? It's kind of weird.
I feel that it also sucked away from kind of like the grim dark setting as well, because The whole point was that humanity is assaulted on all sides by threats. Space Marines are just barely able to kind of reinforce and hold things down for the most part. The majority of the work is being done by the Imperial Guard. And then out of nowhere, it's like, oh yeah, by the way, I know that this situation looks grim dark, but just right around that horizon, we've got thousands and thousands of new Marines on the way. And it's like, huh?
This one I roughly remember. I think I was like just giving a like a brief description, talking about like how the Dark Angels has accepted Primaris and other chapters, and I think I went mainly of how mostly 90% of the chapters that is not part of Gilliman's 500 World Ultramar kind of thing wouldn't accept Primaris and all that. And then I think we just continued the discussion after that on that.
I was just going to say that I just kind of see it as this. These are writers that are probably not very good at what they do, and they want to inject a lot of additional personality into these Marines because they feel that if they have these Marines in a book, they might come off as being too dry. That's my guess. And so they're always looking for ways to inject a little bit of personality throughout the way, which is not necessarily bad. However, I think they overdo it to the point where it's like, okay, now these characters are not even acting like Space Marines no more. Now you basically just have basic humans with their personalities and stuff into play. And it's just like, no. You can do that with the Imperial Guard. You can do that maybe with some of the main characters, if maybe they're talking with their men or other people of equal rank, and so maybe they have that ability to kind of maybe have some banter just a little bit. But I think it's pretty silly because when you look at your normal troops and stuff, it's like how often in a modern military sense right now do you see troops back-talking their superiors, questioning their orders, telling them, I don't agree with this. Maybe what you should do is go around here, or I'm not going to do that, or this is too risky. We can't do that because of this and that, blah, 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 blah. It's like, dude, you're going to get annihilated by doing that just in a modern military. Now you're talking about Space Marines where it's like you can't question orders because your missions are actually at a higher risk level than even just a basic soldier. You're going on near, I would say, sewer slide type missions. And so it's like everything has to be done in order and it's got to be done on time. So if someone snaps you an order, you're not sitting here to question this stuff. You got to get it done immediately because lives are literally at stake. So you should feel that pressure. You should feel that professionalism. And at the same time, I think with Space Marines, that's why I say the Grey Knight Omnibus did it very well. They are cold and they're calculated. And a lot of times, with the way that they write the book, it's from the perspective of the Space Marine thinking and analyzing the situation, going, this guy seems to be like this level of a threat. If he turns out to be a traitor, I don't know if I'm going to be able to stop him, and so I'm going to keep an eye on him throughout this mission or whatever the case may be, if they meet up with somebody that they're not sure who this person is. So that's more interesting, in my opinion, than just having these dudes give banter amongst each other and stuff, and then, again, like Space Marine 2 with the writing, where Titus is always getting questioned and shit. I'm like, this is just wild. You can't even have this in a modern military, let alone in Space Marines. Again, that's why I say that's where the writing just falls off.
This one was a little bit short, but it was me just questioning about the if Space Marines have a little bit of humanity, because obviously some novels and some books that are just talking about like how just becoming way more humanized, and then in the third and fourth codex are just talking about that, they're these guys, this is what they do, and they're just militaristic. And I even told the Gamza, like as you said, they are cold, calculated, and all that. But meanwhile, we have like writers who are just writing in this certain way, paraphrasing, of course.
They do to an extent. I think it was the 4th edition codex. It's been a long time since I read it. But they were describing Space Marines, and they were saying that technically they're just not even human at all because they've left humanity behind, essentially. But, of course, for the sake of like the narrative, they're still a part of humanity. They still fight for humanity. But it just left like a brief question, like some may question if they're even human at all. But I would say that they still have that element with them, but it should be the pinnacle of humanity. We're not talking about even if you just say they're a part of humanity, okay, but they would basically be like psychopaths at this point. They should be cold, calculated, ready for war. They see atrocities all the time, and it's like they should be able to just shrug it off like it's nothing. Not this like, oh yeah, we just watched, a whole village of people get wiped out anyways, I think you might be a heretic. Haha, that's not true. And it's just like, what? Like, what is this? This doesn't even match the environment.
Now, this one I remember very, very, very well, because this is about the topic about Space Marine 2. Now, well, it kind of almost like a question more or less, because it was more of that, when I did the Space Marine 2 videos, it was when I was like doing all this shit. But this part I remember well is more of that. I just told Gamza, what baffles me so much is that the Wokies are that pissed against the other side. They're really enjoying the game, but at the same time, the other side, they're saying it's the most masculine, testosterone pumped game, even though in Space Marine 2 there's woke elements in it, and it's so baffling for me to see that. And I think I asked him, was like, I just don't really understand where this flip-flop happened and as of why, because it should have been quite the opposite, but instead we have the guys like, yo, this is the most testosterone shit. Meanwhile, the wokies are like, you know, they should have had more woke elements in that. And I'm like, what?
Kind of see it as like a right versus left, where it kind of just seems like if I like it, I'm going to ignore the bad and just say that it's the most amazing thing ever. So like, I'll just give you a brief example here. I see a lot of people where they like Trump, and I think Trump's done a lot of cool stuff, but it's like they are incapable of being critical of him, where it's like, well, I'm just on his side, so whatever he does, I'm good to go. And it's like, okay, now I think you should at least be a little bit critical towards these things. And that's why when a lot of people will say that I hate Warhammer 40K and all this other stuff, and it's like, actually, that's not the case. I've been playing this game for quite a long time. I thoroughly enjoy the lore. I like the stories. I love the setting, the models. It's a lot of fun. However, that doesn't mean that you're now free from criticism. And so if I actually appreciate something, I'm going to criticize it. And so, like, let's say Space Marine 2. Well, obviously, I like Space Marines. They're my favorite faction when it comes to Warhammer 40K. Space Marine, the first game, was pretty good. Space Marine 2, of course, we have to shoehorn, you know, Titus getting stabbed in the chest, and oh, that means he's got to become a Primaris Marine now. And I'm like, why is this the same story for every single damn like captain and stuff? If you're just a main character, I should say, you get mortally wounded and you're like, oh geez, the only thing that's gonna save me is a risky surgery that's almost gonna kill me anyways. And so I guess I'm just a Primaris Marine now. And so I'm like, okay, so we got this. Let's just get out of the way. The gameplay, not too bad, quite repetitive, but not too bad. And then it just goes straight into the writing, total dog shit. The characters were so bad, the dialogue, everything was so bad in that game when it came to the writing. But people can't see that. They just see it as, this is the best game in the entire world at this moment because everybody else said so. And if you're criticizing it, you must be one of them lefty loonies. You just don't like masculine games. And I'm like, it's like two cavemen arguing over whose club is better. It's like you can't even have a rational discussion at that point.
Yeah. All right. I got...
I forgive you.
It's like 27 minutes. Oh, fuck my life. Like, I just had the OBS open, recorded, and then I forgot, and then I didn't realize that I needed my side of the audio needed recorded.
Now you're just gonna have to dub in your voice.
Fuck me.
How are you today?
Yeah, just put AI generated voice into it. Oh, fuck that. I'm not even gonna restart. Fuck that. But yeah, you do mention a lot in your streams how Space Marines and Space Marine 2 don't make sense at all, and the way I merged it together is almost like World War II high school type of writing. But then again, we had that trans writer that seemed not to understand completely about Space Marines, but knows how to make things dramatic, which make no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, that's why I say it's like high school 2.0. Don't write Space Marines like this. They should be cold-hearted professional killers that get the job done, and that you should see it from their perspective, not this high school drama about, oh, this guy did this and he did that. And it's like, are we forgetting what Warhammer 40K is? What's the whole premise about stopping heresy? We had a Horus heresy that took place, and so now everybody should be scrutinizing when you start questioning your commander, back-talking him and going, well, I think this is too risky, or disobeying orders. It's like that shit is shut down immediately, because if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. The whole point is discipline and you obeying without question. You sitting here questioning every order doesn't make you a good Space Marine. It makes you a shitty one. You should be turned into a servitor at that point.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, no, because and also I have a little bit of a guess is that the people who write these things, maybe they never had a job in their life, so they don't really understand is when you have a job, you have to do your job correctly. Or they used to have a job, but they always did some sketchy shit. That's my also assumption.
Yeah, I've always seen it as like they are incapable of seeing a story from a character's perspective, and instead they only see it from their perspective. And so that's why they tend to start to self-insert too much. Where if I was in this situation, I wouldn't just blindly follow orders. I'd be questioning my commander. And it's like, yeah, you may think that, but you are not that person. A space marine has been conditioned since a child to obey orders. How does it even make sense that from childhood, you are indoctrinated and trained and disciplined and surgically altered, mentally altered to become a space marine of your chapter, and you're just talking like a normal human, just like that you would find like at a damn library or something. Like, what's up, George? How's it going? Yeah, no, it's not a big deal. It's like, this is wild. This doesn't make any sense at all.
Or they're just sitting around in the ship, crossing their arms, just waiting for something.
Yeah, just chilling.
Yeah.
I know that there's like an invasion going on, but what's up, George? How you been?
Yeah. Instead of just like practicing, training a little bit just to be warmed up. Nah.
Yeah, even then in the books, a lot of times Space Marines meditate as well to focus on their mind, make sure that they have everything in order. And instead, it's like these dudes are just standing around having like, it's like a construction site. You just see dudes standing around having casual conversations. I'm like, what's going on here?
True.
It's like, did we forget there's an invasion going on right now?
So I looked a little bit into when it comes to Horus Heresy, and the problem that I have is to formulate all that together into one video, because Horus Heresy by itself is just big as fuck because of 52 novels plus another 9 books of Siege of Terra. Took me 3 years to finish that. Kill me. Like, then again, that started when I was in 8th edition all the way to 10th edition, so a long journey. But someone made a comment like months ago when I did the Why 40k is no longer grim dark, and I think he's also spot on to this part, talking about how the Horus Heresy itself was to a certain extent responsible of transforming to 40k to what it is now. Do you agree with that to a certain extent? I know you haven't read the Horus Heresy books, but do you know, like, from the way they made their flavor and style maybe might have influenced, or the start of 4th edition when they introduced the Horus Heresy and then the novels that kind of like changed the flavor over time?
To a certain extent, I'd have to poke around a little bit more and exactly see what he meant by that. Like, how was it responsible? Like, I'd like to see like what points he's trying to push.
Ah, shit. Well, until I find the comment.
You can give me some examples of perhaps like what you think it would be.
So the way the Horus Heresy was written, because at the start it was a bit of a fuck around, so you had these insane stories, like how this is a non-chaos world eater, so pre-heresy, where he was trying to escape Terra, 1v1's custodian, and because he's so angry, by the way, he had no armor, meanwhile the custodian did, and he was so angry that he punches through the custodian armor and rip his heart out, and then he just breaks his spear as a little trophy. So then again, those were like the early days of when they were writing the Horus Heresy novels.
Sounds like shit writing.
Yeah, what's even worse is after he went for the second custodian, the second custodian just went in and swooped him off, just cut him. I'm like, fuck's sakes, they trying to make this dramatic. Or
local man too angry to die, but only for a brief moment.
Only for a brief moment, of course, when the writers deem so. And the way, in summary, to a certain extent, the way the Horus Heresy was written is almost like you have the main stuff like Horus goes to Terra, fights the Emperor, blah blah blah. But the way they've written the Primarchs and the Space Marines, they're written them very human. So, like, they're so human. Like, even in the first book, you even notice the first book of Horus Heresy, which is Horus Rising. You have Loken, you have Abaddon, you have Horus and all that. And then there was this certain character called Torgaradon, and he's meant to be the jokey guy. It's like, we're gonna go for some orcs. Well, we're gonna blow them up. Something like that. I don't know. I can't remember the jokes he did, that he said. But he was meant to be like the jokey guy, even though they're Space Marines. And I remember on the operation table, when Horus was trying to discuss his plans, Torgaradon was making another like little silly joke. And for some reason, Horus was just pissed off. The reason behind it was the Emperor left to do his secret project while the stress upon the Primarch was so much on him. It was so overwhelming and all that. Meanwhile, he's meant to be... Yeah, meanwhile, that's where it starts when people say Emperor bad dad and the Primarchs are just little children.
Yeah, that's why I remember I was saying that these are like 300 IQ individuals written by room temperature IQ people. Like, that's kind of what it starts to turn into.
So even in the first book, I looked at it the second time, to be honest. Yeah, you looked at it, and then it's like, why is this so like super dramatic? But then again, the first book started back in 2006. Because... Yeah.
I think it was just a way of trying... here's the thing that I would say, too. In some ways, it would kind of make a little bit more sense back then, because it's like, okay, these guys were susceptible to chaos corruption, which is eventually what would happen because of their emotions were so high. And then I would basically argue that after that heresy, that shit should have been shut down for the most part. And so now, more than ever, whenever these Space Marines start to disobey or act kind of goofy and dumb, if anything, that should be more scrutinized, because it's like saying, this is where it all kind of fell down to begin with. When you get over emotional, you're designed to do your duty, not to be kind of just what people would say dicking around when it comes like on the job site, so to speak.
And that is partly why the Horus Heresy influenced to what the 40k we have today. And because of the Horus Heresy, the way the Primarchs are written, the Space Marines are written, and most of the fights and all this, it's almost like a space opera drama. Because even Horus Rising was with Horus when he fell to chaos. They made this very dramatic shit, very panicky. And I even agree, like, the Horus Heresy, it was meant to be a different time, where there was meant to be this light, but then it was lost forever. That's how I see it. But the problem is, they moved the Horus Heresy ingredient, and then somehow, over time, they moved that to 40k. And because they saw how Horus Heresy was successful, they might as well just integrate that into 40k as well. And that's why you have a lot of jokey bits, and some of the art a bit too clean and all that. But it's a wide audience. It's turned
into Marvel.
Yeah, it's turned into Marvel.
The other thing too that I would just add is that there's so many different authors as well that they have, that everybody has their own little personal take of how the universe should feel. And I think that adds to a bit of the clutterness, if you will, to the overall environment, where you have, again, certain stories like the Grey Knight Omnibus that I keep talking about, where it's, hey, this is serious, it's got a nice grim dark tone. These Grey Knights are not here to play around. They're not joking with each other. Not everything is hee hee ha ha, stop the music. It's like, no, we have a job to do, and it's got to get done right. And then you can go to other books like, I think it was The Fall of Damnos, which is a piece of shit, where it just gets goofy. Like, the way that the story is moving along, you're like, what is even going on here? The power levels seem to fluctuate. 1 minute, the Necrons are like nearly impossible to kill. The other minute, you've got Cato Sicarius like flinging out of a drop pod, just decapitating like 5 of them in one swing. And I'm like, where is it? Like, this is all over the place.
Hey, you're forgetting that the Ultramarines, the greatest of them all.
Very true.
Mm-hmm.
You had to make a point.
What was it? Yeah, some people talk about like Cato Sicarius as a character, like he's very threatening in the lore. I don't know too much about Cato Sicarius other than the Emperor TTS version, when he has this like almost like a Mickey Mouse high pitched voice that people keep relating me to, which is annoying. And he just keeps saying like, "I Cato Sicarius because I am Cato Sicarius is the greatest warrior in the Ultramarines chapter," shit like that. But
yeah, that the book kind of was jerking him off a bit because it was like the way that it started off. It was like, okay, you had like I believe it was the Immortals that were coming down like this hill, and the Space Marines ended up getting in close combat with them, and these Immortals were so strong, the Space Marines were trying to hit them and stuff, and it just wasn't doing anything. And then it's just like, if I can remember correctly, because it's been quite a while since I read the book, but it was like as a drop pod was coming down, and it's like then the Golden Hope, the Lion, the greatest, like it was started just jerking him off, and then the drop pod blows open, he jumps out and just decapitates like 10 of them or some shit. And I'm like, what is this? Like these dudes were struggling literally like a second ago. This dude pops out and he's like, no big deal, just decapitate. And I'm like, all right, like I read a few more chapters, and I literally just threw the book away. I never finished it.
It's probably they got like extra buffs in their aura.
Exactly. Use all this cooldown.
Yeah, yeah, they were on the cooldown, and then when you summon Kata Sicarius, it just halves the cooldown by 70%.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, that sounds pretty dumb. Yeah, I don't know too much. Yeah, I don't know too much with Kata Sicarius other than
they've always kind of portrayed him as a bit of a goody two shoe. That he's like the new up and coming guy that just does so well at everything. That's probably why people hate him.
Is like Matt Ward just written everything as the greatest thing of them all? Like, did he really like that much with Ultramarines? Like, what's your shtick with him?
I have a feeling that Matt Ward was somebody that was told, these are the poster childs now, and we want you to push them and put them in a good light. And I think he was just like, all right, I'll do it. And everybody hated him for it. But, I mean, to a degree, I mean, the dude went overboard, especially when you read stories like Caldor Drago and all this other shit. You're like, what is going on here? Like, you're just turning chaos into like this Saturday morning cartoon villain. And it's like, can we get a little bit serious here? Can chaos have a couple of victories? It's like that villain decay where the villain, when he first comes out, it's like, whoa, this dude's dangerous. How are they going to stop him? And then the next time he's on the screen, you're like, did this dude just lose like half his power? Like, what's going on? And when you write stories like this, you're just like, you start to hate the character that they're trying to tell you that you should like, because it's making a mockery of the villains. And it's like, this is just dumb.
So I was half correct that 5th edition was the pinnacle of the downfall, despite introducing the Grey Knights.
That's where it started to go like kind of funky. I think that's when people were kind of like, I'm smelling some shit around here, you know. But eventually that's when 6th edition hit, and they started adding all this random assault dice rolls and stuff, and they're trying to kind of like merge it in with Age of Sigmar and all this other crap. It's just like, all right, some shit's really going downhill now.
That is true. That is true. Fair enough. The other part that I think this is the last question, since it's only being like 42 minutes, and then I have to somehow fucking edit the 27 minutes of the first time. Then again, I
just take my answers and just dub your questions back over it again.
Gamza, what was the Space Marine? And then
exactly.
Yeah. Nah,
or you can just have it where the first like 18 minutes I'm just talking to myself.
Yeah, guys, Gamza is just a literal schizophrenic, so here's the 18 minutes that he answered to no questions that I haven't answered yet. I think he's a reads my
guys,
mind.
I just had him read off my script. Here's the questions, and he'll answer them as he goes along.
Pretty much. The only thing another part of that I'll go with is the models, specifically, because you did mention talking about like how some new models are just very, very cluttered, which I found it very interesting because I thought I thought HQ models were a little bit more detailed. Meanwhile, you have the basic troops. There are just a little bit, just normal units that you can run on tabletop.
Yeah, no, and I think rightfully so. But to where it's gotten now is just completely absurd. It's almost like they have this canvas, which is the model, and they're told you must fill up this canvas 100%. So he needs to have skulls, chains, symbols, trophies, just stuff all over him. And I'm like, where's my eye? Like, if you look at it from an artistic point of view, your eye should gravitate onto the model where it needs to be, whether it's the shoulders, maybe there's a certain character that has a very stylized helmet. Well, then that should kind of be like the focal point of that model. But when you look at things like Angron, the dude is just so cluttered with so much shit. It's like my eyes are going blurry just like looking at this dude. Like, where are my eyes supposed to gravitate towards? If he's got like a relic axe or something, right? Why don't you make that the focal point? Or perhaps there's something that has to do with his shoulder pads. Maybe he's got something, a good story, and he's got like a trophy that's hanging from his shoulder pad. Well, make that part where your eye will gravitate towards it instead of it just being, there's chains and skulls and just shit all over the place. And it's just like, look wherever you want. It's like, man, there's too much on here.
Mm-hmm. And then it's a pain in the ass to paint all of it as well. So
it is. I've done chaos before, and doing the trimming is a nightmare.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything complicated when it comes to models. Yeah, most of them are just Space Marines. Like, I bought some, like, then again, this was like years ago or a month. I had some Death Company, like, Blood Angels ones, and then I just transformed them into Imperial Fist because they actually came out cheaper than just having a jump pack squad.
Let me ask you this. Do you enjoy painting the models?
Yeah. I enjoy painting them, and sometimes if I'm able to find a shortcut and almost meet the same result that I wanted to, or the paint that I wanted to go with, then I could just run with it. Like, I've done almost everything, really. So I've done a bit of speed paint, which is with contrast paints. I've done parade, I've done battle ready and all that. Because at first... because at first it was like a little bit of, let's fuck around. I didn't know much, so I might as well follow the GW tutorial or the paint tutorials they usually suggest. I still dislike when they're like, so in order to base your model, meanwhile they're just painting with a brush to base the model first to do the undercoat. So
what I like is how opinionated everybody is when it comes to the hobby side, where people will tell you, you got to use a gray primer, a white primer. I always like going with a black primer, and I just love to see how it triggers people. And they're like, oh, no, you can't do that. Or I'll tell them, like, I go to Walmart and go buy some $4 or $5 Krylon spray paint and base them, and I'm done. It just throws them into a rage. But I'd have to say, for me, I'm actually a little bit on the opposite, I would say, of most people that play the game. And that is, I thoroughly enjoy playing the game. I do not enjoy painting the models. I will speed paint that stuff and get it done ASAP because it doesn't, people are like, it calms me down. Well, I'm not full of anxiety, so I don't need to be calmed down. However, painting these damn models will begin to test my patience. Like, I remember I did 40 Khorne Berserkers, and doing the trimming on all those dudes was just a nightmare. I was like, this is just get it over with.
Yeah. For me, like, I enjoy painting them. It's just, it's just more of, okay, where are the shortcuts that I can discover and make them even more quicker than before? But because I've done it so often, I've already done it pretty well. Like, for example, I had a 5-man Terminator squad, and it took me at least, 2 days just to finish them. The only thing it's just missing is putting non-oil onto them, and they're ready to go. or some spots I might have missed where I'm just like, oh, fuck, this small...
Put some of that liquid steel on them.
Yeah, the small part that I just missed. Fuck. But, okay. Yeah, no, like, when it comes to the models itself, it's, yeah. Like, there's some good
I think
models.
less is more for the most part, because these are miniatures. They're not like statues. They should just have shitloads of detail on them. And I feel that it's kind of like that idea where people just like to brag, and it's just like, these have more detail. And I'm like, that doesn't mean that it's better. Just like, if a movie makes a lot of money, in my opinion, that doesn't just automatically mean that it's a good movie.
How ironic is it that the art of 40k has fuck all detail, meanwhile the models do? It's almost like they swapped for some reason.
It is. It is like they swapped. The old artwork was crazy. You could stare at it, and all the nooks and crannies and details and the backgrounds were cool. And then you looked at the models, and they were kind of goofy and plain looking. And now it's the opposite. Now Angron makes you go cross-eyed when you look at him. And then when you look at the artwork, everybody is smooth and clean, and nobody's dying no more in the background.
Yeah. I saw like a recent comment where they were like, "Oh, dude, 10th edition art isn't that bad. Like, you're just cherry picking and all that." I'm like, name 10 dead dudes in 10th edition right now. Because
exactly
10th edition has a little bit of grittiness, but I wouldn't say it's the same level as 40k art used to be. Oh yeah, I think he did say, though I as ironic as it is when he said I cherry picked. Meanwhile, he said, well, old 40k art looks goofy. Just look at the Emperor versus Horus. He's talking about like the 1988 art of the Horus Heresy, where it looked very goofy and all that. I'm like,
yeah.
Well, okay, how ironic is it to say that? Meanwhile, you're not focusing on. It's weird because people don't focus on the. They don't see or understand that setting comes first. In order to get your good stories, that you don't get bored and all that, you must understand the setting. If you don't understand the setting, how can you appreciate the stories that comes with it?
No, exactly. I agree.
Yeah. Because I got too much of... I got too much of... If the setting's meant to be grim dark or is a bit more serious, then it's going to be boring and bland. Just the same with when it came to Necrons. With
yeah, these are the people of the reason why that shampoo has like directions on it. They must be told what to do because they're fucking dumb. Like, which story just has to be laid out and spoon-fed to them. Like, God forbid that Necrons remain a bit of a mystery and you actually have to think for yourself, right? And just ponder, It's like, that's what makes the universe feel that much bigger, is when there's things that are mysterious and you're like, I wonder what's going on. I wonder what's going to happen here. You know, maybe they may elude and drop some hints like, hey, this could be the case. Or it could not be, and you're just like, okay, you come to your own conclusion sort of thing. Where now it's just like, no, everything's got to be spoon-fed to me and laid out. No mysteries. I want to know exactly what's going on. Oh, this one Necron made a joke, and he's for some reason speaks with like an English accent. It's like, what? What's going on? This is stupid.
So this becomes part of my collection. Ooh, Leviosa.
I didn't say, sir. This is part of my collection.
Yes. Yeah.
I love Necron so much.
Oh, fuck. I was trying to remember about something about Horus Heresy. God damn it. Forgore.
One thing I'll say, too, is that that's where the boiling frog comes in, though. When everybody's like, what's the big deal? I just start slowly eroding away at the lore. Things get a little bit brighter, a little bit smoother, a little bit cleaner, and it's always the same thing. What's the big deal? What's the big deal?
Mm-hmm. I went through that whole rant just to... It was almost like doing my past self, but I know there's some motherfuckers who have the same thinking mentality, so I just reenact it for them.
Exactly.
What's the big deal? I don't see the problem. Fuck you.
Exactly. Some dude stands in front of you and he starts slowly pulling out a knife. You're like, what's the big deal? He's not pointing it at me. And then he points the knife right in your face. What's the big deal? He's not impaling me with it. And it's just like, geez, dude, when is it? When are you actually gonna like realize there's a threat going on here?
When's gonna be the level and all that?
Yeah, until you're like already bleeding out. Oh, I guess it is a big deal.
Whoops!
Like, look at what it took for people to like realize this shit was going downhill when they just came out with the female custodies, and then now they're just like, oh, I'm outraged, and it's like, really, you weren't outraged for the last like 3,000 things they've been doing for the past decade?
Yeah, no, that's why I mentioned like, you know, the 40k fans having this double standard that female in the guard is in the front line, even though people are trying to still argue about my fucking thumbnail or the title, where they're like, well, you shouldn't say you female Imperial Guard. Well, you're fucking stupid because you didn't even listen to what I said in the video properly. Anyways, yeah, they look at female Eldar, even though they humanize their shit, or Dark Eldar, or Tau, or female Imperial Guard, and all that. Instead of thinking the exception, they think it's the norm. And
exactly, yeah.
And the other thing when it comes to the trilogy video that I did is that I was focusing on a specific argument that people really failed to do. And I think people are just stupid. Or I don't know how much...
Well, that's the difference, though. You're making an argument, and they're just responding with emotion.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It just turns into, but what about? And it's like, hey, when you get a chance, can we get back on topic?
Yeah. Oh, well, the female god existed in Rogue Trader in this book and that book. And I'm like, I'm talking about 3rd and 4th and 3.5 edition. Can we focus on that, please? So...
No, in one of the novels, God's Ghost.
As ironic as it is, there was
in chapter 43 on page 2, there's 2 nipples.
Fuck my life.
So you're wrong.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And then now after that, I'm just like being called a grifter or troll and all that. Well, trolling is correct, but not for what they think
you
of.
know what the best comments are is when people just tell you that you're dumb and you're wrong, but they can't formulate an argument for themselves.
Yeah, true. Or
you're wrong and you're dumb. It's like, can you lay out a valid argument? It's like, you're dumb.
You're dumb. There was this book, so thus you're wrong, and I'm right.
Exactly.
Time to get my karma in Reddit.